Introduction. The Whisper campaign begins. The war, we were told, was over. The world had moved on. The masks came off, the plexiglass came down, and a collective sigh of relief echoed across the globe. The pandemic had become a memory, a strange and uncomfortable chapter in our recent history. But then, the whispers began. It started not on the nightly news, but in the quiet corners of power. A leaked memo from a global health summit. A revision to an obscure public health statute. A budget line item for pathogen preparedness that was suddenly 100 times larger than the year before. And then, a new designation appeared in technical reports, a cryptic string of letters and numbers that felt unnervingly familiar. NB.1.8.1. There was no alarm, no panic. Not at first. The public was tired of fear. But for those who were watching, a chilling question began to form. Is the emergence of this new variant a random act of nature, or is it a scheduled event? Is this a natural crisis, or is it the start of a carefully managed campaign designed to reboot a multi-trillion-dollar industry and usher in a new, permanent era of global control? The real story of NB.1.8.1 isn't in the headlines that calmly report its existence. The real story is in the billion-dollar contracts being signed in boardrooms, the patents filed months before the variant was discovered, and the surveillance software being quietly switched back on. They told us the system built to manage the pandemic was temporary. But what if the system was always meant to be permanent? And what if this new variant is simply the key needed to lock it into place forever? Chapter 1. The Billion-Dollar Booster. How to Sell a Cure Before the Disease. Picture a vaccination center in late 2024. The cavernous space, once buzzing with a constant stream of anxious citizens, is now silent. A handful of bored nurses scroll on their phones. Boxes of product, each vial representing thousands of dollars, sit in specialized freezers, their expiration dates creeping closer every day. The pandemic business, the most profitable gold rush in human history, was grinding to a halt. Vaccine sales were in freefall. Public demand had evaporated. For the pharmaceutical giants, this wasn't a public health victory, it was a shareholder crisis. And then, just as the financial reports were starting to look dire, a savior appeared, NB.1.8.1. Suddenly, the conversation changed. The need for a new round of protection, a specifically tailored booster, became the topic of discussion in health ministries around the world. The timing was, to say the least, convenient. But the convenience becomes suspicious when you look closer. Public records and industry reports show something incredible. Several of the major pharmaceutical companies had already commissioned and built out new manufacturing lines for an updated formula, 3 to 6 months before NB.1.8.1 was officially identified and announced to the public. Pause and consider. How do you develop, test, and begin mass producing a specific solution for a problem that, officially, does not yet exist? It's like a fire department ordering 10,000 gallons of water to be delivered to an address where the fire hasn't started yet. It implies you know what's coming. The business model of a recurring crisis is far more profitable than a one-time cure. Why sell one product when you can sell a subscription? This variant wasn't just a threat to public health. It was the marketing campaign the industry desperately needed to reboot the booster business. A population that never truly exits a pandemic is a population of permanent patients, a guaranteed revenue stream that lasts a lifetime. But the profit motive here went far beyond just selling more shots. The injections themselves were only part of the product. The real, long-term value was in keeping the pandemic infrastructure alive and normalized. And that infrastructure wasn't just about clinics and supply chains. It was about data, tracking, and control. The next phase required a reason to keep the system running. Chapter 2. The Silent Switch, Reawakening the Surveillance State. Imagine you are an IT contractor working in a government data center. One morning, a directive lands on your desk. It's not a public announcement. It's a quiet work order. The task is to reactivate dormant data streams from the old contact tracing and health pass applications we were all told to download years ago. You're instructed to begin data reintegration. You flip a switch, and a system that was tracking millions of people is silently brought back to life. This is how the next phase of control was initiated. It didn't arrive with a bang. It was switched on in the background. The emergence of NB.1.8.1 was the perfect justification for what was always planned. All those pandemic-era tracking systems, which we were assured were temporary, were never truly dismantled. They were simply put on standby. And NB.1.8.1 was the wake-up call they were designed to wait for. Look at the timing. Just as warnings about the new variant began to circulate among global institutions, several governments announced pilot programs for new digital IDs. The sales pitch was convenience, a single, secure app on your phone to hold your driver's license, your passport, and your voting card. But buried in the terms and conditions was a new section: health status integration. Public health was the Trojan horse. It was the one excuse people were willing to accept for giving up unprecedented levels of personal freedom and data. First, it was used to justify showing a health status to board a plane or enter a restaurant. It was a temporary measure for a unique emergency, they said. But now, with NB.1.8.1, the emergency is back, and the solution is to make the system permanent and universal. Think of it this way. The government installed a security camera in your home to watch for a burglar. They promised they would turn it off as soon as the burglar was caught. Now, they are telling you there's a new burglar in the neighborhood, so they need to turn the camera back on. But this time, it's not just pointed at the front door. It's linked to your bank account, your social media, and your ability to go to work. The camera is no longer there to protect you from a threat outside. It's there to monitor you. The freedom we are being asked to trade away this time is the freedom to exist without digital permission. The freedom to live without our every move being logged and cross-referenced against our health status. But these tools of control, no matter how powerful, need one more thing to work: our fear. And the way fear was being cultivated this time was different, more refined, and far more sinister. Chapter 3: Manufacturing Fear, the New Playbook for Panic. The first rule of controlling a population is to manage its emotional state. In the early days of the pandemic, the playbook was loud. It was a constant barrage of blaring sirens, alarming headlines, and daily case counts designed to induce maximum panic. But loud panic has a side effect: it creates loud resistance. People eventually push back against overt, aggressive fear-mongering. So, for NB.1.8.1, the playbook was updated. This time, the strategy was a whisper campaign. Watch how the information was released. On one hand, you have mainstream media headlines calmly downplaying the new variant, using words like milder, and urging the public not to be alarmed. But on the other hand, you have internal memos from global health institutions, leaked to specific journalists, that use far graver language, warning governments to prepare for significant societal disruption and potential healthcare system overloads. This creates a confusing, unsettling cognitive dissonance. The official voice is soothing, but the unofficial whispers are terrifying. This is intentional. It's designed to create a low-grade, creeping anxiety rather than a sharp panic. A quiet dread is much harder to fight than an obvious threat. You can't push back against a shadow. You don't protest a feeling of general unease. Instead, you quietly comply. You start thinking, well, it's probably nothing, but just in case, maybe I should get the new booster. Maybe it's not a big deal, but I should probably link my health data to that new digital ID app, just to make travel easier. The goal is not to force you into submission, but to gently nudge you into choosing your own compliance. Have you ever experienced this? Think about the news reports. The calm, almost reassuring tone of an anchor telling you not to worry, while the words scrolling at the bottom of the screen hint at a darker reality. This is the new language of control. It's designed to disarm your critical thinking and restart the engine of fear without you even noticing it's happening. This carefully managed narrative, this global symphony of mixed messages, suggests a level of coordination that defies coincidence. It points to a script, a pre-written plan to test just how much control can be reasserted before the population begins to push back. But who wrote the script? And what does the final act look like? The answer may lie in the very origin of the variant itself. Chapter 4: The Ghost in the Machine. Was this variant born or built? Nature has patterns. Viruses mutate and spread in predictable ways. They typically emerge in one location and then travel along human transportation routes over weeks and months. But NB.1.8.1 didn't follow the rules of nature. In one 72-hour period, cases of this identical, specific strain were officially recorded in major, disconnected transportation hubs in Southeast Asia, Western Europe, and North America. Simultaneously, virologists, speaking anonymously for fear of losing their funding and careers, will tell you that this kind of simultaneous global emergence is virtually impossible for a naturally evolving pathogen. It is not, however, impossible if the variant wasn't spreading naturally. It's not impossible if it was delivered. This leads to the darkest question of all. Was NB.1.8.1 born, or was it built? Was it a random mutation, or was it the result of gain-of-function research that we were told had been stopped? This is research where scientists deliberately make viruses more infectious or more dangerous, supposedly to study them. It is the perfect tool for anyone who wants to create a crisis on demand. We are now seeing what appears to be a planned cycle, a terrifyingly simple business model: problem, panic, product. First, you create or release the problem, a new pathogen. Second, you manage the wave of panic using the media and global institutions. Third, you deliver the pre-made product, the vaccine or therapeutic that was already developed because you knew the problem was coming. Think of it like a cybersecurity company that secretly creates a computer virus, then sells the entire world the antivirus software. It's the most profitable business model imaginable. Are we watching biology at work, or are we watching a controlled narrative unfold, a crisis manufactured for profit and power? The pandemic was never meant to end. It was only meant to pause. It established an infrastructure of control, a system of global surveillance and public compliance. Now, that system needs a reason to continue. NB.1.8.1 provides that reason. It's the software update for the operating system of fear, the next step in a cycle that can now be repeated indefinitely. Another year, another variant, another booster, another erosion of freedom. If a crisis can be manufactured and deployed with such precision, it marks the beginning of a new form of warfare. One waged not against armies, but against the public itself. Conclusion: the choice in the next phase. Let's end with a single, stark image. A person stands before a turnstile. It could be at an airport, a sports stadium, or even their own office building. To pass through, they hold up their phone. On that screen is their digital identity. It contains their driver's license, their bank account, and their up-to-the-minute health status. A green checkmark appears, and the turnstile clicks open. Access granted. This is the finish line. This is the world that NB.1.8.1 was the catalyst for. A world where access to society is no longer a right, but a conditional privilege granted by an algorithm. A world where your freedom of movement is tied directly to your compliance with a mandated medical regime. This story has not been about a virus. It has been about a system. NB.1.8.1 was the perfect tool to advance a pre-planned agenda. It provided the justification to reboot a collapsing, trillion-dollar vaccine industry. It gave the excuse to reactivate a global surveillance machine under the guise of public health. And it was used to deploy a refined form of psychological warfare designed to make us afraid of each other and dependent on the state for our safety. The ultimate goal was never just public health. It was public compliance. The end game is a society where dissent is impossible because the levers of your entire life, your money, your movement, your identity, can be switched off if you fail to obey. The system is now in place. The next phase of control has been rolled out. The only question that remains is how many people will choose to accept it. The turnstile is waiting.